So, topic 6, side numbers, whole numbers first, no fraction, no decimals. So for topic 6, we'll start with number line. So number line is a line that starts from 0, extends to the right, and as it extends to the right, the number gets bigger and bigger. So kind of looks like this, starts from 0, and the numbers to the right are bigger. But the thing is, the number in number lines, the line can also extend to the right. And when we extend the number line to the right, we get a new number set called negative numbers. Now, to differentiate the negatives from the old numbers, we're calling the old numbers positive numbers. 0 is called 0 because it's neither negative or positive, but we do know in between of them. So, why the negative numbers are called negative is because they have this negative symbol to the right of them. Positive numbers doesn't have to have a plus sign in front of them to indicate they're positive, because if they don't have a negative in front of them, it's already implied that there's positive. So no need of having trouble putting a positive a positive sign in front of this number to indicate it's a positive one. We just know there's a positive one. Now let's compare integers. Integers, you might have not known what integers are, but it's a new vocabulary. Integers are basically whole numbers that can be either positive or negative. So it can be -1, -2, -3, 1, 2, 3, and 0 are called integers. So let's compare two integers here, -5 or -1, which one's larger. Now, if you're not comfortable with comparing negative numbers, the best way to approach it is to draw the number line. So you draw a number line like this, and you just label it from 0 to -5. Here I skip every even numbers, so 0, -1, -3, -5. Now we're just going to compare which one's larger. Here it already says to you that 0 is to the right of -5. Why is 0? -1 is to the right of -5. Then -5 is less than -1. So if you guys don't recall the rule of comparing numbers, here's a quick recap. So when we compare positive numbers, let's say 5 and 1, we know that 5 is larger than 1 because 5 is to the right of 1. So this is 5 and this is 1. 5 is to the right of 1. So that means 5 is greater than 1. The same thing applies with negatives, or in this case integers. Anything to the right of that number is the larger one. Anything to the left is the smaller one. So let's have something easy. -1 and 2, which one's larger? Well, the thing is, you should know that any positive number will always be larger than negative numbers, because in a number line, then negatives will be right here and all the positive numbers will be here. So you should know that negative numbers is always going to be smaller than positive. Hence, -10 is less than 2. Let's have another one. Here, we're just going to compare -3 and -1. -1, if we draw a number line and you label it -1 to -3, -1 will be somewhere right here, -2, and then -3 will be here. And since -1 is to the right of -3, that means -3 is less than -1. Again, we're going to do the same thing. Again, here's the -4 and 3. Since 3 is positive and -4 is negative, it's already implied that positive 3 is way larger than -4. Now we're going to compare -2 and -5. If you're drawing a number line, -2 will be somewhere here, -5 will be somewhere here. So that means -2 is greater than -5. Now the last one, -1, -2. So if you draw a number line again, you draw and you label -1, -2, -3. You should know that -1 is to the right of -2. That means it is greater than. Now let's compare from smallest to largest. So how do we compare multiple integers? So here's an example, -7, 4, -1, 0, 8, -2, -8. So if you're having trouble comparing smallest to largest, the easiest way to do it is to draw a number line and just simply label the number, plug in the numbers on the number line. Or you can do it mentally. So if you think of a number line, let's have a number line here. Let's go make it visible. So here's a number line, and we're going to label it from here. Which number is our right handmost? The number that will be the rightmost number on the number line is -8. It's pretty much the smallest negative in our negative numbers. So -8 will be somewhere right here, and then we're just going to cross it out. Now we're just going to choose which one's the next number on the number line. Here is going to be -7. -7 will be right here, and then we're going to cross it out, and then we're going to repeat it. So now, which one's the next one? It's not going to be a positive. We still have negative, so that means we don't need to put it in positive yet. So now, which one's the smaller one, -2 or -1? This case is -2. So going to be right here, -2. The last one is -1. And then you're just going to compare which one is large. Now we only have positive and zeros left. Obviously 0 will be in the middle. And then next is 4, and then last one is 8. And the order will be -8, -7, -2, -1, 0, 4, and 8. And that's basically how you do it. Now let's talk about something called opposite. In higher math, it will be called inverse, but opposite is basically the same thing. So opposite in English, what's the opposite of left? Well, it's right. What's the opposite of white? Well, it's black. The opposite of wrong is right. So what is the opposite of 5? Well, it's -5. Why? So some of you might think that the opposite of positive is negative, and you got the concept correct. In math, opposite or inverse is two numbers the same distance from 0 but on the opposite side. So the opposite of -8 is 8, and the opposite of 4 is -4. It's basically simple. Now let's have some notes. So let's clarify some symbols. So in this part, 6, that's sign into. How do we read this? Well, we're just going to say it as 6 plus 2. We read this as plus. You should not say as 6 positive 2. It's supposed to be 6 plus 2. Now let's move on to the next number. Since there's no negative sign here, it is implied that it's positive. You don't need to say, you don't need to write it as +4 or +4. You can just leave it like this, a regular number. And we call, and we say, how we say this is we say it as +4 or just 4. Now let's move on to the next one. Again, you should read this expression as 3 minus 3, not 3 negative 3. And last one, this is not -5, this is -5. Just some clarification before we move on. Now let's start simplifying sign numbers. So we have a -2. So when we have negative and negative next to each other, instead of thinking of -2, think instead of what's the opposite of -2. So what's the opposite of -2? Well, it's +2. So that means negative of -2 is +2. This idea leads to the idea of negative times negative is positive, but we'll get into that later when we're dealing with multiplication and division. Right now, we're just doing the simplifying. So let's have a few examples. What is the negative of -27? Or again, think of this as what is the opposite of -27? Well, opposite of -27 is +27. Now we have negative of +2. Again, instead of thinking of that, think of what's the opposite of +2 was -2. Now let's have a few more examples. 7 minus -9. It looks kind of similar to negative of -27, except there's a number in front. We have a number 7, but the same idea applies. We'll learn why later on, but again, you can think of this as negative of -9, or again, think of this as opposite of -9, which is positive. And this one will be plus. So 7 minus -9, we can simplify that as 7 plus 9. In this case, we have to write a plus. We have to indicate the positive symbol, or in this case, the plus sign, because there's a number in front. If you just leave it as this, if you just leave it as 7 and 9, that's not how it works. We're not multiplying, we're not creating a new number. You have to signify what is the operation between 7 and 9. We'll go into more details in this case later when we're dealing with addition. I know the first one is minus, not a negative, but the same idea applies. This is a minus, not negative, but the same idea applies. It's the opposite of -9. Some may wonder, how can we turn the 7 into negative? Well, we just have to write a negative from this part. But right now, this we don't really care. We only care the sign in the middle. We don't really care in addition or in addition and subtraction. We don't really care about the signs of the first number. We only care about the symbols, the signs of the middle number. Again, If you didn't get it before, the signs only affect the numbers to the right of them. So this sign does not affect 7, but affects -9. This negative affects this 9, turning it to a negative. Now let's talk about absolute value. Well, absolute value is basically the distance of a number from 0, basically measurement. Here's a quick scenario which you can read it by yourself. So again, if you think about it, when you measure something, if you measure things, you're never going to get up negative numbers. It's always going to be positive numbers. Because what we're basically doing is we're measuring. And that's basically the definition of value. Absolute value is the measurement. So let's say you measure the distance from Jigo to Manilao and it's 15 miles. And you go from and then you drive there, and if you're going to go Manilao to Jigo, are you going to go get, let's say you live from Manilao, right? You're from Manilao and you went to Jigo and you want to measure the distance. And let's say the distance is around 15 miles. And you're going to go back from Jigo to Manilao. Do you think you're going to drive -15 miles? No, it doesn't make sense. You're still going to drive positive 15 miles. That's the thing about negatives. Absolute value. So absolute value uses the symbols of 2 straight dashes. This is not 1. It's larger than 1. So if you compare it, 1 is this height and absolute value is this height. So you can see that the absolute value is way longer than a 1. So example, what is the absolute value of 5? So it's basically asking how far is 5 from 0? Well, 5. Now let's have this. What is the absolute value of -3? What is the distance from -3 to 0? 3. Again, let's have some practice. Absolute value of 6 is not 5, 6. Absolute value of -27 is 27. Absolute value of 0 is 0. Absolute value of -1, again, not -1. Now let's step it up a notch. What is the absolute value of negative? What is the negative of absolute value of 9? So some of you might get confused, and some of you might probably answer 9, but that's wrong. The quick question is the negative sign inside of the absolute value sign? So no, right? So what it's basically saying is, what is the opposite of absolute value of 9? So again, cover this one and think, what's the absolute value of 9? Well, 9. What's the opposite of the value of that? Well, it's negative. Think kind of like that. Or basically, this thing turns whatever you get here into a negative. So this will give you 9, and this negative sign will turn that to a -9. I know this is a curveball, since I just told you guys that you're not going to get any negatives when we're talking about measurement. But the thing is, this part is not included inside of the absolute value sign. It is outside. So it still stands. The absolute value sign will always give you negative. The absolute value sign will always give you positive numbers, but this negative sign will turn that positive number into a negative number. So let's have an example. What is the negative of absolute value of negative 18? Again, if you don't know how to do it, cover the negative. Let's go erase that first. What is the absolute value of negative 18? 18, right? But this negative will turn that to a negative, so your answer will be negative 18. So let's have again, note that absolute value doesn't work like the parentheses. So you might think we're going to do something similar like this. What is the negative of negative 3 is 3. You're just going to simplify that. Doesn't work here. It's negative 18, my bad. Negative of the opposite of absolute value of negative 18. Then you cover the negative 18, the negative, and you find the absolute value of negative 18, and then you turn that into a negative. So negative of the absolute value of negative 18 is negative 18. Let's have some practice. Negative of absolute value of 20 is negative 20. What is the absolute value of negative 10? Since this side will so your answer should be what? 10. Because the negatives are inside the absolute value. Again, absolute value will always give you positive unless the negative is outside. So since the negative is inside the absolute value, you will get negative. You will get positive. Now let's have another one. What is the opposite of absolute value of negative 5? Again, you cover that negative outside first, and you figure out what's the absolute value of negative 5. Now that's negative 5. You're going to turn that to negative, and you get negative 5. Last one is the absolute value of negative 18. Well, it's 18. Now let's stop here.